Eamon, the World Cup, does it really have any relevance for Ireland now that we're out of it?
Well, insofar as there's a lot of prestige attached to great sporting events and achieving something at great sporting events like the Olympics and the World Cup, I think it has a relevance to us as a country. I wouldn't expect everybody to see that immediately, but I certainly think if we had qualified for the World Cup, it would be good for Ireland, it would be good for Irish industry, it would be good prestige and would make people aware of our country, yes.
Well, for 2 weeks, we'd be inundated with soccer from South America. Now, for the women, and indeed for people who have no interest in sport, how do you explain the phenomenon of soccer?
I think in this World Cup, and as in the Olympics, it's not just a game, it's much more a means of countries getting across propaganda messages, and it also has political relevance.
How is that?
Unfortunately, well, I think, for instance, the Argentine regime would use it to try and make their repressive regime seem what it isn't. I mean, seem nicer than it is. It's a political, public relations job for Argentina as much as anything. So that has no relevance at all to sport. But that is what the World Cup and the Olympic Games have become.
How does soccer, apart from the World Cup, how does it fit in contemporary society? How do you analyse its function?
I think it's an entertainment, basically, at its very simplest level. I think when you get to the World Cup level, as I said before, it's a means of countries to do a good public relations job for your country. I mean, Peruvians will be identified through the Peruvian team. And likewise, Iran, for example, has a team in the World Cup. They have a pretty unsavoury political regime as well. But I think people in Ireland, for instance, will see Iran, not in terms of his political regime, but in terms of his football team. So therefore it's very important.
Well, these young players that you've got training out here this morning, what would it mean for one of them if he actually makes the breakthrough to top-class football?
Well, it would mean that he would have a very good standard of living, would see a lot of the world, would hopefully have his mind broadened, although not necessarily, and would be able to fulfil himself in a way that normally a working class lad cannot. Now, I think it's a great way of expressing yourself. It's a form of self-expression, and it gives you a very profound sense of well-being to express yourself through football.
You use the phrase working class, and indeed soccer is very much a working class game, isn't it?
Essentially, yes.
Is it seen by many young players, indeed many of these players here, as the escape route from possibly a humdrum existence?
I think it is the escape route, for not only for working class lads, I think even for young middle class lads who would rather be in sport than in the professions. Many of the professions can be fairly humdrum at times. I think it is an idyllic life. There are risks, of course, and the risks are great, but if you do make it, as they say, it's certainly not humdrum.
Well, what are the pressures at the top? What type of pressures are top-class professional footballers subjected to?
Well, the kind of pressures on people in the World Cup, for example, Scotland have made a great deal of money out of commercial ventures, and they've been widely acclaimed before they went to Argentina. I think the pressures will be in direct ratio to that if they fail. There will be a sense of humiliation, a sense of failure, and also perhaps people's international careers will end. So that's a pressure on a player. If he does badly in the World Cup, this wonderful life he's been leading won't be available to him anymore. He'll go back to merely being a club player, and his income will drop. His sense of pleasure he takes from being part of the World Cup occasion won't be there anymore. So it's the fear of failure. It's all relative. I mean, we all have our,
In your own experience, how have you seen players affected? Have you seen players break under these type of pressures?
I think it's not so much break. They become fairly hard, I think, some of the top sportsmen. I think not only footballers, I think top-class athletes as well. I think there is a great deal of pressure, and it does harden somebody. A sense of enjoyment goes out of it sometimes, I think.
Can I ask you finally, what are your comments to all those housewives, I'm sure, up and down the length and breadth of this country and many other countries throughout the world who are bemoaning the constant barrage of football that they'll be having this week and indeed next week?
I think you've got to learn to live with it, ladies. I'm very sorry, but that's the way the world is these days. And hopefully Ireland will be part of it next time, and doing a good public relations job for the country, I hope.